here to talk about this.
You've got it in your hands. Yes,
I
the
got it in my hand. I was actually surprised about the size because I was expecting the bigger size, the ones that you normally write.
I must
So when
admit,
I,
I was surprised about the size because I only recently got a hold of my copies that were sent to me, and yeah, I was surprised because I didn't know it was that. I got to admit, we should probably say what it is because we didn't just say what it was.
yes,
It's the
I
it's,
did.
it's
Please.
the Jurassic Park script book. So yeah, I was surprised. I didn't really, because it's sort of when you work on these things on page, when you get sent PDFs and all the text is laid out and all the photographs are laid out, I guess you have no idea, yeah, what size
Uh,
it's going to be. I never thought it would be
yeah.
smaller personally. uh and this is nothing to do with me, well, it's partly to do with me writing it, I suppose, but I really love this book, like perhaps more than the other two that I worked on. In the end, of course, the point of the book is, for those that don't know, it is obviously the script by David Koepp,
Yep.
the sort of shooting script that they used. So it's as close as you'll get to the movie. It's that script. It's obviously illustrated with lots of very cool photographs and concept art and so forth. And then my contribution was to sort of annotate the book, or annotate the script where possible, with little box outs, wherever, anything that I thought that would be, kind of cool to talk about. So it's kind of like a miniature version, and you could say, of what I did in the Jurassic Park Ultimate Visual History book, but we tried to make sure that it doesn't repeat the information that you got in that book, because obviously that's not much fun for a reader who's already bought that book to then buy this and just to have the same facts and figures, so to speak, regurgitated. So I had to sort of take a different approach, um which at first didn't at first when I did it, I kind of was a little bit too literal and I had to go back and rewrite, and then I was kind of advised to go and try and speak to David Koepp, which I did. He was incredibly generous with his time, as he was previously when I spoke to him for the Jurassic Park Ultimate Visual History book. So I got to talk to him. I tried to drill down as much as possible into elements of the script. And then, yeah, it really it's a sort of, it had to be sort of script based. Any of those kind of box outs that I did, anything that came up, you really had to sort of go, okay, there's an element in the, let's say, for example, when John Hammond says welcome to Jurassic Park, that very famous phrase that he uses when he first shows the Sam Neill and Laura Dern characters, it's their first trip into the park. Now, there have been obviously multiple scripts written before Koepp's, coupled by Michael Crichton, who obviously wrote the
Yep.
original novel. And so what I was trying to do is trace the origins of, I guess, the evolution of the script. So taking that Welcome to Jurassic Park line, in an earlier, well, in fact, in Koepp's earlier version, he did two versions as well. It was Ed Regis, the sort of park PR guy, who's not in the final film, is in the original novel, of course, and he'd given it to Regis, and then obviously that character got cut in a later version, and then you suddenly think he obviously gave it to John Hammond, and you think, how on earth could that line, is so associated with
Yeah.
with John Hammond, with Sir Richard Attenborough's performance. How on earth could that ever have been in someone else's mouth potentially? But it was at one point or another. So it's really, I sort of dug deep into the previous scripts and tried to look at various iterations and how things change. So a lot of the stuff in the book, a lot of these little box outs are sort of script based, rather than let's say regurgitating how the visual effects for the dinosaurs came alive, which you can read about in the other book, if you see what I mean. I mean, there's a little bit of that in there, but it's much more sort of text based. So going back into the novel, looking at the differences there, going back into these earlier scripts, as I said. So that's basically what the idea of the script book is.
Yeah. And one of the things, I mean, going back, thank you for explaining all that. I think that's fantastic. One of the things I really loved, like I said, I was surprised about the size of this book because I was traveling and I ordered it. And I was thinking in my head, the package came, and I'm thinking in my how which bag am I going to put it in? Like in my backpack, or am I going to check it in? Because I was assuming the big size, right? And then I opened it, it's like this, and it was so great because I was reading it on the plane. I mean, you can't read these books on the plane. I mean, you can, but it's just way too much space for the seat that you have, right? So that was really great thing about it. And one of the things I noticed in there was an original. I don't know if you ever looked at the original making of Jurassic Park book that came out way back in the 90s. You can even get it on eBay. Um,
I'm looking at it down there on my floor. I have that
okay, so you
book.
have it, which I need to get because I somehow lost it. I need to get it again. And it has
It
some
is,
of
I
the,
might add, sorry, just to interrupt, but it is,
yeah.
I will say this partly because it was a sort of Bible when I was writing the Ultimate Visual History Jurassic Park book. And I would genuinely say it's one of the greatest making of books I've ever read. There's that one, and there's also one for the Lost World as well. But the Jurassic Park one, it shows you how well these books can be written if you've had fantastic access, which the writers on that book did, and but they turned it into something. It's a brilliant, uh, a brilliant sort of text to kind of really capture how that film came to. That film was obviously such a groundbreaking movie, and they were there, those writers on the front lines basically, and I can't speak highly enough about that book.
And I think that book actually started the trend of all the books that have followed after that. Like all the books that you see here, I mean, these are just a small percentage of it. Like the shooting scripts, the making of, all these things. And I think there was this magazine, what was it called? Cinefex? Cinefex?
Yes,
Like,
and Jodie Duncan, who co-wrote that making of book, as a regular, and possibly even editor, I'm not sure, but definitely a regular writer at Cinefex, and covered all of those Jurassic movies for Cinefex as well. Obviously, they're going into the special effects and the visual effects, and
yeah.
again, those articles were absolutely fundamental to me in terms of research and brilliantly written articles. And Jodie spoke to hundreds of people, it feels like, and yeah, catalog those films absolutely brilliantly.
Yeah, I have some of those magazines still around. Here we go. They're not on Jurassic Park, but there is the AI one,
Wow, yeah.
and then War of the Worlds.
I think I only
All
ever saw the digital versions of those. I don't think I've ever actually seen the magazine in the flesh.
2001 Space Odyssey. They're great. And Minority Report. I mean, they've been around for a long time, but I think I got a whole bunch in the 90s. But yeah, I mean, they're kind of like going what we were talking about, like the books that you worked on, but more from the effects standpoint.
Yeah.
But one thing that I, I I was wondering when this book was announced or when you told me about the book, I'm like, why are they coming out with a book when the films are all done? Right? And then this big announcement happens with Jurassic World, another film that's coming out on July 2nd, 2025, with David Koepp writing the script. And then they announced the director, or kind of said that this guy might be the director who might be directing it. I forget his name, but he had directed something really fast-paced. Um,
I think you're thinking of David Leitch, I think.
yes, yes, yes,
But
yes.
he's now not connected
I
to
do
it. I'm assuming
100%.
you know who is connected
Yeah,
to it now.
yeah, yeah. So when I said read David Leitch, I'm like, why are we going in that direction? And then all of a sudden there was an announcement he may not be involved. And then the Gareth Edwards thing happened. And you and I have talked about Gareth Edwards, about
Yeah.
the creator. And I could not think of anyone better
I
to helm on
whole
Jurassic
I
World.
wholeheartedly agree. It's like it's almost the film he was built to make on some level, having done obviously Godzilla and well, having done the creator too. It feels absolutely perfect. I can't, and Gareth and David Koepp back from writing. This is Koepp's first, I suppose you'd say, first original Jurassic script because he adapted Jurassic Park and The Lost World. And then he's kind of been involved in the background, consulting on some of the later films. He's been around, but he's never had a credit. but this would be his first original take on the franchise. And yeah, I have to admit, I'm thoroughly excited about this whole, this whole enterprise. I haven't really talked to that many Jurassic fans about it, but I can imagine they're all stoked that this could be the combination.
I'm part of some Facebook groups and Reddit threads and everything, and the response has been incredible on Gareth Edwards, and he, I mean, the only thing I was like, where are they going to go with this? But then again, there's no official confirmation on this, but there have been some rumors that this could be a prequel to Jurassic Park. So they may do a trilogy to the original thing, which again, there is no confirmation. This is just speculation and rumors. But I just cannot wait. And the fact that it's coming out next year, I mean, would mean that they probably are going to get into production anytime as we speak. Because, there's also obviously special effects and marketing and all that stuff. So it would be something incredible to witness. And Gareth being a huge fan of Spielberg as himself, like growing up with his movies and making his first film Monsters, which is one of the best movies an independent director has ever made from a story standpoint, from the visual effects standpoint. And he knows, and you and I talked about this, about that how he's one of the very few directors who know how to merge the story in such a way with the visual effects where visual effects are the story. And he's just perfect for this film. I cannot wait for it. I
Yeah, I have to
cannot wait
say,
for it.
I hadn't heard the rumor about the prequels, and now you say that, that makes kind of more sense in a way that he would be beginning a new franchise rather than say, let's call it Jurassic World 4, which might have a bunch of new characters in it.
Yeah.
Um, but and okay, that would be the beginning of a new franchise, but in a way just feels like a continuation of what we've seen with Dominion, i.e., the dinosaurs out in the world. Now that's fine. You can, come up with a new story, but the idea of a prequel leading up to Jurassic Park does sound very interesting. So presumably a young John Hammond, etc., etc.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that would be really good because that if they do Jurassic World story onwards, it's kind of like been done. I mean, in my view, it's just gonna seem to feel the same. But having like a small scale, I don't know if you ever seen that movie Bumblebee,
Yes, I've seen that.
like the Transformers spin-off, the it was a very grounded film,
It's actually one of
and
the better Transformers.
yeah, I
Well, in this
agree.
case, spin-off, like you said. But yeah,
Yeah. And I think if they kind of take that approach, but obviously with dinosaurs of in some capacity, just exploring who John Hammond was because his character was amazing in the first Jurassic Park, right? Like he was like the playing God and how he kind of turns around and realizes what a big mistake he's made. Exploring that and obviously with the dinosaurs and everything and getting it to the park. And those incidents happen in the way the first film opens up. I'm not sure if you remember where they're trying to contain a raptor,
yes,
leading up to that. That would be really, really cool. But we'll see. I mean, I'm assuming if the release date is July 2nd, 2025, they're probably going to release something of synopsis or a teaser this summer just to kind of get the fans excited.
but it'll probably just be a raptor in a cage, shaking a cage
Yeah.
or something and growling, and just to tease us a little bit more. But yeah, that'll be it. Will be fascinating to see what direction it goes in. I mean, I can't wait to find that out. I mean, it's I mean it makes complete sense they are doing another one given Dominion made $1 billion. You sort of think, well, they're not going to just stop now, are they? But
Yeah.
like you said, Dominion, you could carry on that story, but you have to come up with a really good one. It can't just be dinosaurs escaping and running amok because they're out there now in the world. So, I mean, I did enjoy Camp Cretaceous, the Netflix
Oh, the
animated
kids.
show.
Yeah,
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 and that
yeah.
that was very clever in the way that it ran parallel in the timelines to the Jurassic films, and that was cleverly done. I did wonder if maybe they would bring some of those kids if they were going to do a continuation of Jurassic World, if they were going to bring some of those kids, as in flesh them out with in human form, not animated form. But yeah, but a prequel idea that's pretty good too.
Yeah. Going back to your book, James, I mean, you kind of touched upon it, but this obviously was. not to take away any of the work that, you and David did on this, but it was a smaller scale book. And working with David, what was that experience like? Were you on phone with him most of the time? Was it just few calls? Just
It,
sort of working with him.
Yeah, to be honest, it was one call, one interview.
Okay.
I mean, he was in the middle of shooting something, and as I said earlier, very graciously gave me some time to talk to him. So, but there were three people in the end that I interviewed. And I should at this point pay a little tribute to Derek Davis, who was a great assistance on the book. He's very knowledgeable in the Jurassic universe, and it was him that pointed out that. So it's just a sort of backtrack, basically. So you had the Crichton novel. Crichton wrote a couple of scripts himself. Then he sort of said to Spielberg, "I've done my bit. I'm stepping back. You take the scripts and do what you will." Now at this point, of course, they're trying to figure out how they can even bring these dinosaurs to life. So they're having meetings with all the visual effects guys, the special effects guys, um, and so you then have Rick Carter, the production designer, who's obviously central to all of these kind of meetings. And at a certain point, Rick comes up with his own script, basically, which is not an
Yeah.
official script. It was never meant to be an official script. So in this book that I did, we kind of refer to it as a kind of working document. And it was Derek that sort of was that had pointed this out to me. So and so I went back to Rick and talked to him about his version. And there are little subtle differences in what he did to say what Crichton did and then what Koepp did later on. So again, it's all part of that evolution that I was talking about with the scripts. Now, it wasn't really meant as a sort of serious script. It was more a way for Rick to assemble the ideas of the storyline in his mind as he was kind of putting this together. But it's still a sort of fascinating step in the chain of scripts. So we talked about his, as I say, I call it working document. Um, and then I suppose the one I'm proudest of, if that's the right word, is I got to talk to Malia Scotch Marmo, who'd worked on Hook, the Spielberg film before Jurassic Park.
Trust. Yeah.
Now Malia adapted, worked on the script for that. And after the Crichton ones, I think after the Carter one was sort of, as I say, unofficial, but after Carter had done his work, Malia was brought on to do a version herself. And you mentioned the making of book earlier that was produced at the time of the film. Malia is quoted in that book about her work on the script. And then, in the end, Spielberg decided to go in another direction, and that's the point that he brought David Koepp in. Excuse me, but Malia since sort of talking to the writers for that making of book, Malia hasn't really talked about her Jurassic experience. So I managed to sort of find her and sort of persuade her to talk. And so there are some quotes in there from Malia, which I'm
Yeah.
delighted to have in there because there really isn't much material from her out in the world about her experience on writing Jurassic Park. And it's really difficult, I'm sure, for a screenwriter to talk about a film that they worked on that ultimately they're not credited for. But I think, you know, all the Jurassic fans, the hardcore fans, know that she was involved and that she again was a part of this evolution, part of this chain. And I guess it's nice to give her a little bit of credit where it's due because she's a very important part of that process.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you for sharing such detailed breakdown of the process that you went through. I think, uh, like I said earlier, it's just amazing that all this stuff on Jurassic Park keeps coming out. The books, the Camp Cretaceous series. I think there's another season if I'm not mistaken. Then I read, and I saw the other day. I think it was Sony that released. The Jurassic Park games from the beginning of time, like since the first PlayStation on on the disc, so you can play on and PlayStation 5 or 4. So it kind of shows you the evolution not just of the technology, but also kind of like reliving, the 90s and all that stuff. Again, all this stuff is really, really fun. And I keep checking on, sometimes on Facebook and eBay the ridiculous amount of merchandise there is on out there in Jurassic Park, and it's just again, it's if the film made $1 billion, just imagine the merchandise what that would do.
Well, quite. I mean, I think there's a new video game coming out as well. I think it's Jurassic
Yeah,
Park Survivor, is it?
survival. Yeah.
Yeah, Survival, and which looks amazing. It looks great. I mean, that's kind of like that looks good enough to buy a, you know, console or whatever it's on. I'm not sure what format it's on, but um, yeah, it's. I mean, second only to Star Wars, isn't it? Really, in terms of like the nature of this franchise, this enormous beast, and it just keeps on giving. I am amazed. I mean, since I wrote or got into starting to research that first book, which now takes me back to well, almost 4 years ago. Um, I don't think I quite realized back then how big, how crazy the fandom was for it, and how vast this franchise. Well, I mean, this franchise has evolved even since I, started on that book, as you've just described, with video games and animated series, and well, another film that was released in 2022, and now the one that's coming in 2025. Yeah, it just goes on and on, and the fandom and the fervor for it just doesn't stop.
I actually wonder, and I think about this because the first Jurassic Park obviously created such a big, you know, it just created something brand new, and then Lost World did something to add to it. It wasn't as amazing, but people still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the experience of watching it on the opening, like the pre-opening day. And the third one was a disappointing to a lot of fans, but I still enjoyed it. And then between the third one and Jurassic World, there was a gap of at least 11, 10, 11 years. So I think the fandom kind of did disappear or die, or it was always there. But I think with the technology and with social media and then the new film that came out, Jurassic World, everything changed. I think that really changed it. And I think they realized that they waited too long for the new trilogy to start. And that's why they're banking on a new one before they lose that momentum and that uh, audience, love for these films as sometimes as bad as they could be, but still people love to go see them.
Well, I guess that interim period you're referring to, it wasn't for the want of trying. There were a number of attempts to get Jurassic, well, let's call it Jurassic World, scripts written, or I think they were calling it Jurassic Park 4 at that point,
Yeah,
and things just never quite happened.
yeah.
Um,
And that's
so
all in your original book, just to let the
yeah,
audience know.
I
Yeah.
mean, to some degree, and I think in some respects, obviously it did die down the further around that time, but there were always kind of video games or comics or whatever around at that time. So even then, the franchise sort of bubbled away, albeit not on the scale it has been for the last 10 years since Colin Trevorrow's Jurassic World came out. And yeah, you're right. Now they're not going to let it go. They're not going to let it go dormant for another 10 years. Especially, I mean, I suppose you could, and then just there'd be a new generation getting back into it. But really, it makes sense while all these players, David Koepp and Gareth, as we were discussing, are all around and making stuff, get it into production. I mean, I'll be honest, I was shocked when there was this sudden announcement that David was
So was I.
involved.
Yeah.
I was shocked, but at the same time, it makes complete sense. So, but what format this film will take, as we were just discussing, is another matter. But yeah, I mean, you'd be foolish not. I mean, it is Universal's. It's their jewel in the crown, isn't it? It's apart from maybe the Fast and the Furious franchise, which is obviously huge as well, but Jurassic has endured over a much longer period of time. Um, so yeah, of course they're gonna put another one into play. But at least this new one has such sort of credibility, ties back to the original with David Koepp, and obviously Frank Marshall's producing. Patrick Crowley is also producing, and he steered the Jurassic World franchise, into screens. So yeah, to me, it all sounds extremely hopeful.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean this is kind of going off topic, but it's I don't know how many years will we what's the right way of putting this? Have you heard of this new technology by OpenAI called Sora?
I haven't. No.
Okay. Go to their website and watch it. It hasn't out yet, but it's kind of like ChatGPT, and I'll tie it up to Jurassic Park in a second. It's text to video. So basically, you can write out a scene, right? Like a girl in a red suit walking down the downtown streets of Japan or etc., whatever. And in a matter of seconds, it actually produces a photorealistic video that lasts 15 to 20 seconds. And that came out 2 weeks ago. It's not out public yet. They just released, some of the tests. And it's when I saw that, and a lot of people in the industry saw that, it's just even Tyler Perry just had said in a Hollywood Reporter the other day that he was going to start building a new studio. And after seeing that, he's holding off because that's going to change a lot of stuff. And I going how to tie that to Jurassic Park is, or Jurassic Park films, is the idea of dinosaurs and CGI and all that stuff. If this is so powerful and so great at this point in the opening era of OpenAI's Sora, I don't even know what's going to happen in the next 2, 3 years. And that will affect all the films. It will affect the budgets to go down and it will affect obviously work. But I wonder how that sort of affects films like Jurassic Park. Maybe not in the next 4 or 5 years, but down the road, it's going to have a huge impact. But take a look at it. I mean, you'll be blown away. You'll absolutely be blown away.
We'll
It's
we'll
amazing.
all we'll all be making our own Jurassic Park films, basically, and or at least our own dinosaur films.
Yeah, it's insane how technology has. I mean, it's as a techie person, I love it, but it's just going in a direction so fast that I don't know how long we will see what we see the way we see it. It's just going to change things quite a bit, but we'll see if they have some sort of massive regulations on them. It'd be good, but I would love to explore. It'd be fun to do things by sitting on the computer and produce all these little videos, but to do it professionally would be interesting to see how Hollywood adapts to it.
Yeah, I mean that is cutting edge technology, basically. But we will see. I mean, how these things are made is one thing. I'm always much more interested in the story and what
Yeah, I know,
story
I know,
and
I
what
know.
story they come up with. And I'm sure most Jurassic fans are too.
But the problem is how far it's gonna go, and I guess we have to adapt. And I think in that it happens when the tractor came out, people were freaking out. When the internet came out, people are freaking out. When social media came out, people are freaking out. So people find a way to adapt. But this would be interesting to see how we adapt as in the industry and a society as a whole. Um, what's next for you, if that's
Well,
something you can talk about?
yeah, yeah. I think I can talk about this now. Well, it's interesting that we were talking about Gareth because obviously he worked on Godzilla. I've got an art book coming out again for Insight on Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, which is obviously Adam Wingard's second film in the MonsterVerse, universe. So that will be out well after the film, which is out.
May 14th.
I think it's March 29th, I think now actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazon saying May 14th.
Oh,
Maybe they haven't
for the
updated.
book. Sorry, I thought you meant
Book,
for the
yeah, yeah,
film. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's a 6 weeks or so after the film comes out, and that's mainly looking at the artworks. There's incredible concept art that that those guys did for that. So I got to speak to a lot of concept artists, which is not something I've done a lot of before, and that was fascinating actually. And yeah, if you're into those films, it again the artwork in the book is beautiful. So yeah, I would definitely check that out.
I saw the trailer for that. Wasn't too crazy about it. I loved Gareth Edwards' Godzillas, and I also saw the new series that came out on Apple. I don't know if you saw that, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, and it deals with like all these monsters and Godzilla. It's like a 9 or 10 part series. Kurt Russell is in it. And Kurt Russell's son is in it. I forget his name, but it basically span over like 3 different time periods. So yeah, I mean, I will see the movie, no doubt. I did see what was that one with this came out like 5, 6 years ago where they go in the forest in I think in Vietnam, was it in Vietnam or somewhere
Oh,
where
are you thinking of Kong? Uh,
Kingdom of Skulk or
yeah,
something.
Kong Skull Island. You're thinking of, I think.
Yeah, I enjoyed. I really liked that movie. I was surprised. This one looks interesting, but we'll see. I mean, I'll still watch it, but I will watch it, and I'm more fascinated with um how they make obviously the creatures, and the concept art is something that I really enjoy because I've spoken to a lot of people over the years when I used to do my website, like all these concept artists whose work probably never sees the light of the day in the film, but they're just so beautiful to see and just kind of like absorb like this amazing piece of work. So I'm glad that you did this from this angle because it's totally different than talking to writers and actors and directors. They're just completely different group of people who have this amazing vision, and some of their vision never sees the light of the day.
Mm. Yeah, and I think they all appreciated having someone come back to them and talk about their artwork. And a lot of these guys had done a lot of this stuff a long time ago, and then obviously ideas evolve and change, and it was kind of fascinating to. I did a lot of Zoom interviews basically, and then I'd just share the images that I'd been given and just say, tell me about this and why is it looking like this, and then what was your inspiration for this, and you just get some funny little anecdotes and Adam, who I did get to speak to for the book, was fantastic. So he is a he's a great guy. So yeah, I think it'll be a fun book, and yeah, well, we should talk about it, but in May when it
100%.
comes out.
100% would love to. And I'm just curious. I mean, it seems like obviously watching movies and critiquing, reviewing them, and then writing these books, how much of a time does it take you to produce a book, like to work on a book like this? Like, obviously you can't measure the hours, but I'm just kind of curious, like, is it take up a lot of your time on top of your schedule, or is it
Yeah,
just,
it does. It certainly. Well, weirdly, the Jurassic Park script book was meant as a kind of quick job,
yeah. Yeah, and I
effectively.
can tell. Yeah, yeah,
And yes, it's definitely not got the depth of the Ultimate Visual History books, but I mean, the honest story of the script book was that I was given a pretty short deadline, and was kind of encouraged to sort of write as quickly as possible, and in a way use anecdotes that weren't in the visual history book, but material that effectively in a way got cut out or never quite made it. um and I did that, and then it didn't really work, and we were kind of like, it's too close to the visual history book.
yeah,
And that's what I said at the beginning. We didn't want a reader to come and buy that book having bought the other one and then just think, oh, this is just a rip off of the first book.
yeah,
So that's basically my second draft, if you like, was then that's when I spoke to David and Rick and then eventually Malia as well. And that formed the backbone of what you have now read. And so but that the first draft, I think I did it in a week, which was crazy. That was like a crazy week. I remember that week very well. But and then obviously then I went back and did those interviews, and then slowly started weeding out the box outs that didn't work. Some of them I kept, some of them did work, but some of them didn't, and then replaced them with this sort of new material I got. I mean, obviously, as you've seen, the box outs are sort of 200-300 words maximum. They don't take long to write,
yeah,
particularly. So that wasn't an exhaustive, compared to the visual history book, which took, I mean, that was my sort of pandemic project, if you like. But and the Godzilla one wasn't too bad because again, it's relatively short bits of text where it's more artwork driven. But I don't know how many now, sort of 15, 20 interviews, whatever it was. There was a decent number of interviews in there, but it certainly wasn't the longest project. It's strange when you do these things. Yeah, you definitely don't want to think about the hours you put in,
yeah. Of course.
because then
Yeah,
you think, oh my god,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it
yeah.
does take over your weekends and evenings and what have you, or as you say, on top, or however you structure your day, but on top of your other your normal schedule of trying to see movies and do everything else that I'm trying to do. So it all blurs into one, basically.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. And I know, and people know that it's a lot of hard work that goes into these books. And the amount of time that you spent on these books and the books that you were working on are phenomenal. I mean, I've pretty much gotten everything that you have written since Jurassic Park. So really excited about all your work, the upcoming book, Godzilla and Kong. That would be really exciting just from the standpoint of creativity and what went into it. I know I may not enjoy the film as much as I may enjoy the book, so really looking
That's very
forward to
kind of
that.
you. That's very kind of you. I'm sure
And
you'll enjoy the film too.
I hope so. I hope so. I think I need to sort of sometimes it becomes hard. Like now I'm looking into films a little too much from a story standpoint. And some of these films don't really have great characters and incredible story. They're just kind of like, fun pieces. But I think I just need to sort of figure out a way in my head how to take that out and just watch it as a form of entertainment and then go back to the way things were. So I have to figure out a way how to do that, but I'll still watch it anyways. I'll still watch it anyways.
Yeah, I know. I think you should. I mean, I think after Jude, it's the next big, blockbuster to come out, isn't it? I think so.
Yeah,
Because we're
yeah.
about a month or less than a month away from its release. So, it feels like a good time for it to be released. That sort of springtime before we get into the big summer releases.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, So I'd say go and see it.
I will. I will. Awesome. Thanks so much, James, for your time as always. Looking forward to chatting more.
Yeah, take care. Cheers. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.